if you love discovering knitting patterns from different cultures and parts of the world, this video is for you. Over the past year, I've explored different knitting traditions from various countries all around the world, from Korea to Shetland, from modern knitting to centuries-old traditions. So today I've brought all of that together into one long, cozy world tour of knitting patterns and designers. So if you're looking for some inspiration or maybe just some company to knit along with, this video is for you. So grab your knitting, make yourself a cup of tea or coffee, and let's begin our journey. What if I told you there's an entire world of knitting full of elegance, whimsy, and cultural richness that most knitters have never discovered? Today we're exploring Korean knitting, a scene that blends delicate aesthetics with thoughtful creation, and it might just change the way you look at your next knitting project. I am going to introduce you to 6 talented knitwear designers and 10 of their amazing patterns. To really appreciate today's Korean designers, it helps to get a better understanding of the cultural history that they are working within. And Korea carries its own stories and traditions that are very worth mentioning. Korean textile art has always been deeply expressive. Long before modern knitting, Koreans practiced bojaji, patchwork wrapping cloths that are both practical and deeply symbolic. These cloths, often made from silk or rami, were traditionally used to wrap food, gifts, or sacred items, and the piecing technique has inspired everything from quilting to modern knitwear design. This love for precision and composition is also something that I noticed when looking through all of the different knitting patterns from Korean designers. They are often beautifully balanced, aesthetically pleasing, and intentional. Like many cultures with a deep connection to craft, Korea also has a rich tradition when it comes to natural dyeing, often using plants like indigo, gardenia, and persimmon. Even today, some Korean dyers carry this tradition forward using local ingredients and historical methods. The focus on subtle, earthy colors is reflected in many Korean patterns. Soft neutrals, gentle pastels, and the occasional pop of a berry red or sky blue. Being a natural yarn dyer myself, of course, this is something that I find especially interesting, and I think there is so much we can learn from those traditional crafts that have been practiced for generations. Knitting wasn't historically a major part of Korean domestic crafts like embroidery or weaving, but it has made a major comeback in the recent years. Young Koreans, especially women, like to practice knitting as a calming hobby and also a form of self-expression. Korea now has a vibrant indie knitting scene with local yarn shops, handmade craft fairs, and entire cafes where you can sip a latte and knit for hours. In post-pandemic Korea, knitting and crochet have also become forms of emotional care. Many local makers talk about the therapeutic joy of making something by hand, especially in contrast to the fast pace of digital life in cities like Seoul. Some even teach knitting as part of mindfulness or art therapy programs. As the knitting community has grown, so has the demand for beautiful yarns. One of Korea's oldest and most beloved yarn companies is Nakyang Yarn. They have been founded in the 1960s and they offer a wide array of different yarn bases that knitters of all skill levels love and appreciate. Their commitment to quality and tradition really resonates with Korean knitters and with makers around the world who are discovering their yarns online. And by the way, I am also wearing a garment today that I knitted with Nakyang Yarn yarns. The base that I used is called a cashmere and it is a beautiful blend of merino, alpaca and cashmere. The yarn was very kindly gifted to me by the company, so thank you very much. The pattern that I used is the sweater number 12 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And in case you're interested in the exact colorways that I used here, I'm going to link them for you in the description box in case you would like to check them out, or any other yarns from Nakyang Yarn. They offer a wide array of different yarn bases, everything from protein fiber yarns like wool or merino yarns up to plant-based fiber yarns like linen and cotton, and every blend in between that you can imagine. They have a very beautiful range of colors as well, and I can highly recommend that you check them out. Like I said, I'm going to link them for you in the description box below. Now that we've seen the rich roots of Korean knitting culture, let's dive into the work of 6 talented contemporary Korean knitwear designers. Each of them has their own unique style, from minimalist chic to storytelling whimsy, and I cannot wait to show you the designs that I have picked out for this video. As I was researching this episode, what struck me the most was the contrast and harmony between tradition and modern life. All of the designs that I am about to show you feel young, modern, and playful, but at the same time they are also rooted in tradition and feel somehow grounded. As always for my videos for the Knitting Around the World series, I do have to put out a little disclaimer up front. I do not speak Korean, and I am going to try to pronounce everything correctly, at least to the best of my abilities, but please excuse my very bad Korean, but just know that I'm trying my very best here. The first designer that I would like to introduce you to is Hyunji Jin, also known as Bosong Knit, and her designs caught my eye because they blend charm with attention to detail really well. And the first pattern that I have picked out to show you is called the Floral Breeze cardigan, and this one came out in April of 2025. It is knitted with 4 strands of yarn held together, and that comes out to an Aran weight gauge of 16 stitches and 22 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes that she used are a US 9 and a US 10, which correspond to 5.5 and 6 millimeter needles. This pattern comes in 3 different sizes, with finished bust measurements ranging from 38.5 up to 48 inches or 98 up to 122 centimeters. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease. The cardigan is knitted from the bottom up. It features raglan shaping as well as intarsia for those beautiful flower motifs you can see on the sleeves. It contains both written and charted instructions, as well as links to helpful videos for the different techniques that I used. Now, isn't that just a stunning design? I think it looks so elegant and romantic and feminine, and I would absolutely love to knit this cardigan in the future. There is a second design by Bosong Knit that I would like to show you, and this one is called the Christmas Ribbon Sweater. Now this one has a bit of a festive touch with this ribbon, but I think it would completely work all year round as well. This design came out in February of 2024, and it is knitted with a lace weight yarn with a gauge of 21 stitches and 27 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 4 and a US 7, which correspond to 3.5 and 4.5 millimeter needles. You will also need a crochet hook with a 3.5 millimeter size that corresponds to an E hook, and this one is used to do the edging. This cardigan comes in 4 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 38 up to 47.75 inches or 97 up to 121 centimeters. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease here either. This is a boat neck style sweater that is worked top down with raglan increases, and it also contains short rows. This one looks like a wearable holiday gift to me. I really like the playfulness of the bow in the back, and that the front in contrast looks rather simple and minimalistic. That's also a design that I would love to knit in the future. Let's move on to the next designer now, and I would like to talk about Romance Knit. And the design that I picked out to show you is called the Charlotte skirt. Now just look at this stunning design. I think it is so elegant and beautiful and special while also being wearable at the same time. This is knitted with a silk mohair yarn and you need to hold 2 strands together. She used the tin silk mohair from Sandnes Garn, and this comes out to a fingering weight gauge of 29 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 4, which corresponds to 3.5 millimeters. The design comes in 7 different sizes, and the finished measurements, they are measured at the circumference of the waistband, range from 25.25 up to 45.75 inches or 64 up to 116 centimeters. The skirt is worked from the top down and you start at the waistband. And it is a flare skirt that features this beautiful delicate silhouette and has a gorgeous drape at the same time. Let's move on to the next designer, and I would like to show you this beautiful cardigan by Yunji Chang. The design is called Jewel Cocotte cardigan, I hope, and it came out in April of 2022. It is knitted with the BC Garn Bio Shetland Gots and the Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair held together, and this comes out to an Aran weight gauge of 18 stitches and 26 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 7 and a US 8 that correspond to 4.5 and 5 millimeter needles. It comes in 7 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 39 up to 63 inches or 100 up to 160 centimeters. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease. This is a drop shoulder design that is worked from the top down. It has a simple and basic fit and those beautiful lace panels on both sides of the cardigan. The design is inspired by Jewel Cocotte butterflies and blooming flower buds that feel like spring. Jewel Cocotte means wildflowers in Korean. And there is one more design by Yunji Chang that I also wanted to show you, and this one is called My Dear Sweater. It came out in October of 2024. And she knitted the original sample for her husband, and that's also why it's called My Dear Sweater. The yarn that she used is Nakyang yarn, and the base is Halim Handweaver's yarn, which is a 100% merino yarn in a worsted weight with a gauge of 19 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 6 and a US 7, which correspond to 4 and 4.5 millimeters. It comes in 6 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 38 up to 60 inches or 97 up to 152 centimeters. Unfortunately, there is also no information about the recommended ease here as well. Since she designed the sweater originally for her husband, it is a unisex design that's worked from the top down and features different cable motifs and some raglan shaping. Yunji Chang states on the Ravelry page that she used a heavier weight yarn for the sample that she made for her husband, and this resulted in a heavy boxy sweater, but she recommends to use a lighter weight yarn if you would like to knit the sweater to fit a woman, because then it also becomes more drapey. Moving on to the next designer, I would like to introduce you to Sidna Chang. And the first sweater of hers that I would like to show you is called the Red Berry sweater. This design came out in November of 2024. It is knitted with a DK weight yarn and a gauge of 20 stitches and 26 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 6, which corresponds to 4 millimeters. The design comes in 9 different sizes. The finished bust measurements range from 25.25 up to 61.5 inches. That corresponds to 64 up to 156 centimeters. The recommended ease is 2 to 4 inches or 5 to 10 centimeters of positive ease. This is a top-down circular yoke sweater that features this lovely stitch pattern around the neckline and the yoke. And the designer states that her inspiration were Christmas trees and the cute little red berries with evergreen leaves. The sweater is knitted in the round from the top down. And there is one more design from Sedina Jung that I just have to show you because it is way too beautiful not to. So this shawl is called the Param shawl, and Param in Korean has two meanings. It can mean both wind and wish. And isn't this shawl and the photography as well not just breathtakingly beautiful? It came out in November of 2023 and is knitted with the Baby Yak Medium, which is a worsted weight yarn that is made out of 100% yak fiber. The gauge comes out to 20 stitches and 27 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size that she used is a US 6, which corresponds to 4 millimeters. The shawl comes in one size with finished measurements for the depth of 25 inches that corresponds to 64 centimeters and a width of 102 inches that corresponds to 260 centimeters. This is a triangular shaped shawl that's worked from the bottom up in the round with increases at the center and the sides, and after binding off, the shawl is steeked along the top edge. So steeking basically means that you cut your knitting open in the end, which I think sounds a lot scarier than it actually is. And I think it's extremely smart of her to design the shawl that way because it is much easier to knit color work in the round than knitting it flat, because if you knit it flat, you will have to purl in the color work as well, which is usually a lot more difficult for most people. And yeah, I think that's just a very clever construction. And I also wanted to read the designer's inspiration for you that she put on the Ravelry page. She says, "A myriad of beautiful traditional patterns and motifs can still be found everywhere in Korea, from traditional architecture to daily goods. They have been used not only for decoration, but also for the ways to symbolize nature, philosophy, or wishes. Param shawl captures the aesthetic of Korean traditional patterns, full of wishes for your health and good luck." The next designer that I would like to talk about is Menmi Choi, also known as Soup Knits, and I have selected two of her designs to show you. The first one is called the Parfum sweater, and this came out in March of 2023. I think that's a very clever name because the lace motifs on the sweater indeed resemble little paws. But I think even if you do not like cats and dogs, this is still a beautiful design for you to consider. It is knitted with a merino and a silk mohair yarn held together, and that comes out to a DK weight gauge of 20 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 4 and a US 6, which corresponds to 3.5 and 4 millimeter needles. It comes in 9 different sizes. Finished bust measurements range from 37.5 up to 69 inches or 95 up to 175 centimeters. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease in the pattern. The sweater is worked from the top down, starting with the neckband and then working in the round first. Then the neckline and shoulders are shaped with short rows, and when the shoulder drop is created, the back and front are worked separately to the underarms where everything is joined and then worked in the round. The sleeve stitches are picked up along the armhole edge and worked in the round all the way to the cuff. And Menmi Choi states on the Ravelry page that this design was inspired by her beloved dog named Bongu. Let's move on to the second design of hers that I would like to show you, and it is called the Tulip Scarf. Now, personally, I have not knitted one of those mini scarves or scarlets yet, but I have been seeing them all over Instagram and in different knitting podcasts lately, and that's why I wanted to include this beautiful version in this video as well. It came out in February of 2023 and is knitted with a DK weight yarn with a gauge of 22 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are US 4, 6 and 7, which corresponds to 3.5, 4 and 4.5 millimeters. It comes in 3 different sizes with finished measurements ranging from 3 to 6.25 inches or 8 to 16 centimeters for the width, and 35.5 up to 78.75 inches or 90 up to 200 centimeters for the length. The scarf is knitted from tip to tip in this beautiful tulip pattern, while the outer stitches on each side are knitted in a cable stitch. And there are both written and charted instructions in the pattern. Let's have a look at the next design now, and it is called the Pepuri cardigan by Berry Knitting. And this design came out in November of 2023. It is knitted with a DK weight yarn with a gauge of 23 stitches and 25 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needles used are US 4, 5 and 6. That corresponds to 3.5, 3.75 and 4 millimeters. It comes only in 2 different sizes, unfortunately, only in a size small and a size large, with finished bust measurements ranging from 39.5 inches up to 45.75 inches or 100 up to 116 centimeters. So unfortunately a very limited size range. There's also no information about the recommended ease in the pattern. It is worked from the top down with a V-neck featuring both texture and cables. The cardigan has a raglan shaping, and in the end it is completed with this vertical placket and the beautiful bow. The front placket and the bow are both worked separately without buttonholes and then attached using a tapestry needle later on. And the pattern comes with both written and charted instructions. Now I think across those different designers you will have noticed a common thread, an eye for soft color palettes, elegant silhouettes, nature-inspired themes and a touch of romance. Korean knitwear feels thoughtful, wearable, but with a meaning. Can I tell you a secret? Canada was never really on my knitting radar until I started researching for this video. And then suddenly I was like, wait a second, they are Canadian and they are Canadian too? What I found was a country bursting with talent, quietly confident, incredibly stylish designer who shaped the way knitters around the world dress and knit. From laid-back layers to refined textures, from the West Coast to the East, Canadian knitwear designers are doing something really special. And today we're going to take a closer look. We are heading across the Atlantic to a country that I didn't expect to fall in love with quite so deeply. Canada. Knitting in Canada is shaped by more than just long winters, but that definitely also plays a role. Canada is a vast bilingual country with rich regional diversity, and that's reflected in its knitting culture too. From the cozy, rugged textures you might find in British Columbia or the Maritimes, to the refined urban styles coming out of cities like Montreal and Toronto, Canadian knitwear reflects both practicality and artistry. Historically, knitting was a necessity, especially in rural and coastal areas where warm garments were essential for daily life. Knitting was passed down through the generations, while knitters shared their patterns and techniques with each other, often adapting them to the yarns that were available at that specific time. Early European settlers brought knitting traditions to Canada, which then became intertwined with the traditions of the Coast Salish people, who developed the iconic Cowegian sweater. Here you can see an example of this classic Cowegian sweater design. It originates during the late 19th century, Several knitters from various Coast Salish communities around Vancouver Island and the mainland of British Columbia continue to create and sell these beautiful, authentic sweaters. The brand Knit with Purpose, for example, has a team of indigenous knitters who knit these beautiful, intricate sweaters by hand and are dedicated to preserving their cultural heritage through their craft. I'm going to link their website in the description box below, along with everything else that I am mentioning in this video. Today, that knitting legacy continues, but with a modern twist. There are yarn stores all across the country that also double as creative hubs. There is a strong online community, and events like Knit City Vancouver or Knit City Montreal bring knitters across the country together. And it's not just about the patterns. Canadian yarn is also very special. The country's climate and geography supports a number of domestic hardy sheep breeds like the Rideau Arcot and the Canadian Arcot. Those two sheep breeds are mainly bred for their meat, but the Rideau Arcot sheep also produce a medium quality fleece. While Canada doesn't have the same scale of wool production as countries like New Zealand or the UK, it makes up for that with an incredible community of small-scale farmers and indie dyers. You'll find rustic, minimally produced wool from local mills like Custom Wooler Mills in Alberta, which you can see here, as well as beautifully hand-dyed yarns from dyers like Julie Esselin, Lichen and Lace, or Sweet Georgia yarns. Many of these yarns are deeply rooted in place, inspired by forests, lakes, and the changing seasons. Now that we've set the scene, let's meet some of the incredible Canadian designers that are shaping the Canadian knitting scene today. From timeless wardrobe staples to bold creative statement pieces, these are the names that kept popping up again and again, and each one brings something unique to the table. Whether you already have some of those patterns in your knitting queue or are completely new to these designers, I am certain that you are going to find plenty of inspiration here. And since I unfortunately cannot show all of the beautiful designs from Canadian knitwear designers in this video, as always I have created a knitting pattern bundle on Ravelry, and this contains more than 100 different knitting patterns from Canadian designers. You should definitely check it out. The link is in the description box below. Let's start with a name you've probably heard before, even if you didn't realize that she is Canadian. Heidi Kirrmaier is known for her beautifully simple and seamless constructions. Patterns like Vitamin D, Sunshine Coast, or Shell Seeker are absolute classics. I love how approachable her construction is, but with enough clever shaping to keep things interesting. The top that I am wearing today is a design by Heidi Kirrmaier as well. And if you have watched some of my previous videos, you might already have seen me wear this top because I absolutely love it. This design is called Night Sky, and it is just the perfect summer top in my opinion. It has this beautiful lace detail both on the sleeves and the bottom hem, and it is knitted from the bottom up, and even the decreases on the yoke look like a beautiful design feature to me. I can highly recommend this pattern of Heidi. Another knitting pattern from Heidi that I've knitted myself is called Snowflower. It is this beautiful colorwork yoke pullover, but unfortunately I don't have it anymore, so I cannot show you, but I am going to put up a picture for you. This was one of the very first sweaters that I've ever knitted, and I did not make a gauge swatch beforehand, so the sweater turned out just a bit too small for me, so that's why I do not have it with me anymore. But it is a very beautiful design in my opinion, and definitely something that you could even do if you are more of a beginner knitter. One of her patterns that I have had in my queue for the longest time and that I would absolutely love to have as part of my handmade wardrobe is called Such a Winter's Day. I love the look of this design. It has this refined look. It's classic and elegant at the same time, and I think this is a wonderful piece to have in one's own handmade wardrobe. The next Canadian knitwear designer that I would like to talk about is Claudia Quintanilla. She is the founder and owner of UKnit, which is a beautiful yarn store and also a pattern brand that is based in Toronto. Claudia's designs are soft, feminine, and often inspired by nature. Patterns like the Alba tee, Betty, and the Ariel pullover are on my personal to knit list. She also has an eye for photography and styling, which makes everything feel so inviting. Claudia has written several books, and she wrote one for children's patterns called Making Memories, for example, and that contains 25 different patterns. And I especially like her book called Memory Lane, Embellished Knits to Cherish, that came out in September of 2024. Now, if you know me, you know that I absolutely love embroidery, and Claudia very thoughtfully combined knitting with embroidery and also beading in this book. Claudia is originally from El Salvador in Central America, and she then later on emigrated to Canada. And since she has such an interesting story, I thought it would be very fun to hear directly from her. So let's hear what Claudia herself has to say now.
Hi, my name is Claudia Quintanilla. I'm a knitwear designer that live in Toronto for 35 years. I'm originally from El Salvador. First of all, I would like to thanks Anika for inviting me here, and thanks all of you for listening to what I want to say. Design is my life. I design every day, all day. It's my full-time job. I get all the pleasure, and everything I do is about design. I get inspiration from everything, especially from memories, movies, smells, books, dreams, nature, pieces of art. Inspiration is infinity, and the source is knowing us, is around us, and all of you can get inspiration from anything that surrounds you. Today, I would like to show you a few of my sweaters, and especially one of them because I made the decision that my sweater should be relieved today in Ravelry, that it can be relieved in the same time than this show. I'm going to show you my sweater called Divina that is going to be relieved today, and it's here in white, and it's made with double mohair, and it's meant to be very oversized sweater, and it's accompanied by this Divino skirt. And I don't going to go into the technical details because I know Anika does way better job than I am. And here is the same sweater that I haven't have time to blog. And this is another Divino made with another yarn. It's made with cashmere lace and lace mohair. And it's a little different than this one because this one is less transparent, so you can appreciate a bit better the stitch. So this is Divina, and it's coming out today. I want to show you another two sweaters that have just come out the last 2 weeks, and one of these is Miel, and I just showing it to you because it's a very simple regular sweater for beginners, but I add these little details of pearl buttons that I think it make it more interesting. Again, another sweater easy to make and really good for autumn and spring is this sweater called Chest that was released just 2 weeks ago, and it's great for the autumn because you can layer things under, and it's easy to make and very, very pragmatic. I don't know how good it would be to put it inside a jacket just because the sleeves are really big. And to say goodbye, I'm going to show you two sweaters that Anika said that she really liked. I mean, she said that she liked these three sweaters a lot, and they happen to be my favorite ones too. This is Betty, that was inspired in a silk top that I really love, and I have worn this sweater so much. I think this is the sweater that embraces more my style. And I'm going to show you two sweaters from my book, Memory Lane. This one just because Anika love embroidery and I love embroidery and knits. This one was embroidery with butterflies and was inspired by a relationship in my childhood when my uncle and me were to hang butterflies, and it's have the most beautiful memories in each butterfly. And the last one, but for me the most important thing, the most important one is wings. Why wings is so important for me? Well, wings is really important for me because it was dedicated to a collective memory. It's inspired in a song by Bibi Quintana that is called Sin Miedo, means without fear. And this song is dedicated to women who have died in feminicide. She said, their vidas really hard and we grow wings. So that's why the name of the sweater is Wings. And each crystal represents the life of a woman who have been killed in feminicide. And the crystal shine like a star. And that is how the memories of these women remain with us. So I just want to say thank you for listening to my explanations from my sweater, and it's been a pleasure to be here. Again, thanks Anika for inviting me, and thanks all of you for listening to my explanations of my sweaters.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for taking the time to share your story with us. Next up is Melissa Clulo. Melissa is one of the co-founders of the iconic yarn store Espace Tricot that is based in Montreal. She has since moved on and is now the founder and owner of Sonder Yarn Co., a yarn company that offers 7 different yarn bases in beautiful colorways. All of the yarns are synthetic free and non-superwash, so I highly recommend that you check them out, and I also have a couple of them here to show you. For example, this is her silk mohair base called Halo, and the colorway that I have here is called Petrichor, and this is a beautifully soft silk mohair that I am so looking forward to knit with, hopefully very soon. And I have another one of her yarns. This is the Sunday Morning Luxe Sport, which is a blend of blue-faced Leicester, Mesham, and Cashmere. And the colorway that I have here is called Cover to Cover. But of course, Melissa is also a knitwear designer. Her patterns are timeless, classic, and a lot of them are even available for free, which is absolutely amazing. For example, this is her turtle dove cardigan that I've had in my queue for the longest time. This is one of her free patterns, and it was first published in Line magazine issue 18. Another free pattern is this gorgeous classic sweater that is called La Rentrée. I really like the puffy sleeves and the otherwise minimal look of this design. Now, you cannot talk about Canadian knitwear designers without mentioning Tin Can Knits. Alexa Ludman and Emily Wessel are friends, and they have been designing knitting patterns together since 2010, and they have created one of the most beginner-friendly, inclusive pattern brand out there. Patterns like Flex, Rye, and Love Notes are iconic patterns, and they are graded for all ages and sizes. I also love their commitment to teaching. Their tutorials are so clear and empowering. Personally, I have knitted the Rye socks before, a free and very straightforward pattern. I'm going to put up a picture for you because unfortunately I do not have them with me anymore. This is a very simple, straightforward sock with this beautiful garter section that is on the top of the foot, and otherwise it's a simple stockinette pattern, and I can highly recommend that you give those a try. I love to knit them. And one more pattern from Tin Can Knits that I've made myself is this sweater here, which is called Mountain Mist. This is a gorgeous sweater that I loved to make. It is from their book Strange Brew, which I have here, and that I can also highly recommend. This is a book featuring different colorwork patterns, a lot of colorwork yoke sweaters, but also accessories, and it even contains a recipe so that you can create your own colorwork yoke design. Moving on to the next designer, and I would like to talk about Sasky & Co. Now, if you have not heard of Saskia & Co. before, you are in for a treat. The brand was previously known as the Petite Knitter, but it was renamed in January of 2025. Wei Qian is the designer behind Saskia & Co., and she describes her brand as an ode to her senior dwarf bunny Saskatchewan, short Sasky. Wei Qian is based in the Canadian Arctic and has one of the most cohesive design aesthetics that I've ever seen. Her patterns also feel so perfect for where she lives. She clearly draws a lot of inspiration from nature, the wildlife, and her surrounding area in general. I mean, just look at her beautiful Instagram feed. The pictures alone feel like a work of art. This stunning colorwork top is called Spring Fling, and I just think it is absolutely gorgeous. You can knit it with either short or long sleeves, and it's just so cute. And these are her Sick socks, which are such an adorable and whimsical design. Although the animals on the leg of the sock look like squirrels, those are actually Sick. Sick, also known as Arctic ground squirrels, are native to the Arctic. You have probably already noticed on the pictures that Wei Qian has swapped out the mane and the contrast color for the two socks. She actually does that a lot with her sock patterns, and I think it is such a cute and whimsical thing to do. In just reinforces her brand so nicely. Wei Qian has also written a book called Arctic Knits, which features more than 15 different knitting patterns, both for garments and accessories. Next up, let's look at a designer whose work feels like wearable art, Jennifer Beal. Her lacework and geometric colorwork patterns are just breathtaking. Think shawls that look like stained glass or garments that are shaped in really unexpected, beautiful ways. Jennifer is an atmospheric scientist, but after her son was born, she switched careers and is now a knitwear designer. Let's have a look at two of her beautiful patterns now. For example, this sweater is called Villa Marie. It is knitted sideways with a steek at the hem and neck. It also features this beautiful lace pattern, and I think it looks so unique and special. Or look at this top called St. John's Without. Such a stunning lace tee that is worked in pieces. You start with the front and back panels of ribbing that are worked top down, then stitches are picked up along the sides of the panels and the lace is worked to the sides and joined with a 3-needle bind-off. Such an interesting construction, and I think the top looks so lovely. Next up, let's talk about Marie-Christine from Tricot MCL. Now, I do have to admit I was not familiar with Marie-Christine's work prior to starting the research for this video, but when I came across her on Ravelry, I knew immediately that I had to include her in this video because her design aesthetic is just so beautiful. I mean, just look at these beautiful patterns. This cardigan, for example, is called Romance, and I think it's just perfect. I would absolutely love to knit this one for myself. So feminine and timeless with the slightly scalloped button band and the puffy sleeves. Or this one here, it's called Menuet, is just so gorgeous as well. I love the unusual shaping, the lace detail, and again, the scallops and the puffy sleeves. And she even has her own line of merino yarn. And another designer that I would like to introduce you to is Chantal Miagissima from Knititude. She focuses specifically on adventurous beginners, which I absolutely love. She says, if you know how to knit and purl both flat and in the round, have knit a scarf and a hat and want to dive into making your first garment, you found the right place. I promise you can make one of my sweater patterns. Each pattern is based on simple, easy-to-get construction and modern, clean lines, written for the beginner knitters who want to explore and expand their knitting skills. One of her patterns that has been in my favorites for the longest time is called the Easy Eyelet Yoke Dress. I feel like this is a pattern that you can easily dress up or down, and it's just so pretty. Or look at her Snowfall Sweater Scarf. Such a unique shape and interesting idea. In her pictures, she has combined it with a very elegant dress. It almost looks like a wedding dress, but I think this piece would also be so cozy to snuggle up in while relaxing on the couch on a cold winter's day. So what ties all of these Canadian knitwear designers together? I would say it's clarity, wearability, and thoughtfulness. Their designs are often seamless, size inclusive, and created to truly fit into your life. Whether it is a sweater to wear every day or a top that you want to make for a special occasion, Canadian knitting patterns feel deeply rooted and deeply creative at the same time. Before making this video, I had no idea how many designers that I personally admire are actually Canadian. And that's one of the things that I love most about this Knitting Around the World series. It constantly reshapes how I see the knitting world. I am so excited to take you on this fiber-filled journey across Australia today, from beautiful lace socks to Bridgerton-inspired tops and even some Parisian blanket blocks. Let's get started. When you think of Australia, you might picture sun-soaked beaches, kangaroos, and maybe the Sydney Opera House. But what many people don't realize is that Australia is also one of the fiber powerhouses of the world, especially when it comes to wool. Merino wool is probably the most famous, and for good reason. Australia produces 80% of the global fine merino wool, which is considered one of the softest and most luxurious wool. These sheep thrive in the dry climates of states like New South Wales and Victoria, and the country has spent over a century developing ultrafine merino breeds that are now used in both commercial and indie yarn production. But Australia's knitting culture isn't just about raw fiber. It's also deeply tied to community, storytelling, and sustainability. In recent years, there has been a shift towards small batch and ethical wool production, and some farmers even offer fully traceable yarns, meaning that you can literally follow the yarn from the sheep all the way up to the finished product. This initiative is called the Australian Wool Traceability Hub, or AWTH. Australia also has a thriving indie dye scene, especially in places like Melbourne, Sydney, or Tasmania. These indie dyers often draw inspiration from nature, from eucalyptus leaves and red desert sand to the deep blues of the ocean. When it comes to knitting styles, Australians tend to adapt to their own unique climate. Most parts of Australia are warm most of the year, so that's why you will find a lot of airy constructions, lighter weight garments, and cotton blends. But in the southern states like Tasmania and Victoria, where the winters can get chilly, you will also find layering pieces and wool garments. Knitting is also gaining momentum as part of the broader slow fashion movement. Knitters tend to focus more on timeless pieces that can be worn year-round, and a lot of them prefer to knit fewer but better garments that can be used over and over again. And of course, knitting is also deeply social. There are knitting festivals, knit nights, and online communities where Australian makers can connect and support each other. What makes Australian knitting so special is the mix of global excellence, like their world-famous merino production, with down-to-earth creativity and warmth. It's practical but beautiful. It's rooted in tradition, but at the same time totally open to modern experimental design. And that's what it makes it such a rich source of inspiration. Now let's have a look at the 11 knitting patterns that I have selected to show you and the talented designers behind them. And since I can only show a very small selection here, I have created a bundle on Ravelry with more than 110 different knitting patterns from Australian designers. I am going to link that one in the description box below for you, along with everything else that I am going to talk about in this video. The first designer that I would like to talk about is Helen Stewart, also known as Curious Handmade. Helen has created more than 200 knitting patterns to date, and she has a beautiful portfolio to choose from. She also created the Handmade Sock Society, which is a 6-month mystery sock knit-along where she releases one pattern every month, and knitters can participate in the knit-alongs for each of the patterns. And of course, since it is a mystery knit-along, you do not know upfront how the sock knitting patterns are going to look like. The pattern that I would like to show you is called the Flourish Socks, and it has been released in April of 2025. It was the first pattern of the Handmade Sock Society number 6. And there is another pattern available in this mystery knit along called the Letterpress Socks, which is also a very beautiful design. I am actually thinking about joining the Handmade Sock Society for this mystery knit along because I think the Flourish socks are such a beautiful pattern, and I imagine it is so much fun to be part of this amazing mystery knit along. In case this is something that also interests you, I wanted to read the inspiration of the Handmade Sock Society number 6 for you. It says, "The season of the Handmade Sock Society is inspired by the dreamy aesthetics of light academia, a cozy atmosphere of sunlit libraries, antique writing desks, and snug reading nooks. It's dedicated to the secret worlds inside our journals, our favorite stories, our sketchbooks, and our daydreams." Back to the Flourish socks. They are knitted with a fingering weight sock yarn, and that comes out to a gauge of 32 stitches and 46 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 1, which corresponds to a 2.25 millimeter needle. It comes in 3 different sizes and is knitted cuff down with this beautiful lace motif that's running down the front. And I also wanted to read the designer's inspiration to you that she put on the Ravelry project page because I think it sounds just so lovely. She says, "The Flourish socks are inspired by the swoops and scrolls of handwritten copperplate script. These socks are knit from the top down, beginning with a ribbed cuff. A scrolling lace panel flows down the front of each sock, framed delicately by twisted stitch columns. The ornate effect seems complex, but the repeats have a pleasant rhythm, like meditative sessions of calligraphy practice. The traditional heel flap and gusset construction ensures a comfortable fit, while the round toe creates a neat finish, and it's easy to swap in your own favorite heels or toes if you prefer." Let's move on to the next designer now, and I would like to talk about Marzena Kolacek. She has a beautiful design aesthetic in my opinion, and the first pattern that I have picked out to show you is called Melanie, and this is actually available for free, and it was released in November of 2016. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 19 stitches and 27 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are US 4 and a US 6, and that corresponds to 3.5 and 4 millimeters. It comes in 5 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 35.8 up to 56 inches or 91 up to 142 centimeters. The recommended ease is 4.75 inches or 12 centimeters of positive ease. The designer states that this is a great pattern for beginners. It is worked in one piece from the top down. The front stitches are cast on using the provisional cast on, and shoulders are shaped using short rows. You also have this beautiful folded hem detail where the bottom edge is folded and live stitches are attached to the wrong side to create a double layered finish, and you'd also do the same for the collar. If you have seen some of my previous videos, you might know that I am on the lookout for a simple drop shoulder sweater for my very first hand spun sweater project. So I have spun up a sweater's quantity of yarn that I'm going to put a picture on the screen so that you can see. And I think I have finally found the perfect pattern for it. I am quite certain that I'm going to cast on the Melanie sweater very soon because I think this is just a perfect pattern. It is simple yet elegant and somehow looks sophisticated and understated at the same time, and I really like this design. Now, like I already mentioned, Marzena has a beautiful selection of patterns in her portfolio, and that's why I decided to show you another one of her designs, and this one is called Priscilla. and was released in December of 2020, and this just looks like a work of art to me. I think it is simply stunning. It is so intricate and feminine and romantic, and I'm absolutely in love with this design. It is knitted with a fingering and a lace weight yarn held together to create a DK weight gauge of 11 stitches and 24 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are US 6 and a US 7, which corresponds to 4 and 4.5 millimeters. This design comes in 7 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 35 up to 58.5 inches or 89 up to 148.5 centimeters. It is recommended to be worn with 3.5 up to 7 inches or 9 to 18 centimeters of positive ease. Now this is a slightly cropped cardigan that is very richly decorated with this fine lace stitch pattern. It also contains cables and bobbles and is finished with this charming wavy placket. The design is worked from the top down and in one piece. It starts with 2 front pieces, which after the neckline shaping are worked straight down to the underarm. Stitches for the back are then picked up and worked straight down to the underarm. The back and front pieces are then joined together and you continue knitting straight down in one piece to the hem. Afterwards, the placket stitches are picked up along the front and the back neck, and you work some 1x1 rib and shape this wavy structure using German short rows. And I also wanted to read the designer's inspiration to you. She says, "This charming cardigan was designed to satisfy the deepest desire for beauty and sophistication of every romantic and sensitive soul. Priscilla is a truly adorable design, filled to the brim with carefully selected, intricate patterns and thoughtful details. The final effect is highly influenced by its complexity and well thought out form. It is one of those projects that made me soar to new heights of creativity." Let's move on to the next designer, and I would like to introduce you to Phoebe, also known as Friday Knits. And the first design that I would like to show you is called the Eloise top. This is knitted with a merino yarn held together with a silk mohair. So a fingering weight yarn plus a lace weight yarn to create a sport weight gauge of 22 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2.5, 4 and 5, and that corresponds to 3, 3.5 and 3.75 millimeters. This design comes in 8 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 35 up to 58.5 inches or 89 up to 148.5 centimeters. The recommended ease is 0 to 2 inches or 0 to 5 centimeters of negative ease. The top is knitted flat, beginning from the mid-back and up to the shoulders. Stitches are bound off for the neckline and the shoulders continue down the front to above the bust. Stitches are then cast on for the rest of the body, which is then worked in the round. Sleeves are picked up and worked in the round with short rows and finished with an I-cord, and the neckline is finished with an applied I-cord. This design is one of her Bridgerton-inspired designs, and in case you don't know, Bridgerton is a show on Netflix that takes place in the early 19th century and is set in a fictional London Regency era and centered around the noble Bridgerton family. And Eloise is one of the sisters of this family. I also selected another pattern from Friday Knits to show you because I think it's just so beautiful and perfect for summer. This one is called the Boxy V-neck and it came out in April of 2023. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 24 stitches and 34 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are US 2.5 and a US 4, which corresponds to 3 and 3.5 millimeters. It comes in 8 different sizes. The finished bust measurements range from 34 up to 62 inches or 85 up to 155 centimeters. It is recommended to be worn with 4 to 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimeters of positive ease. The top is worked from the top down. You begin with the back neck and then work down to the armholes. Stitches are then picked up for the front and joined at the neck and worked down to the armholes before joining in the round. The piece has customizable elements for both the neckline and the armholes, and there are also video tutorials throughout the pattern to assist you with the various techniques. What I really like about this design is that it looks so flowy and comfortable. And you can also wear the side with the buttons either on the front or on the back, which I also quite like. Let's move on to the next design that I have picked out to show you, and it is called La Mascarada by Catherine Rain. And Catherine is part of the company The Cable and Lace Co. that she runs together with her sister Christina. And the pattern that I have picked out to show you, so the La Mascarada, came out in August of 2020 and is knitted with a sport weight yarn with a gauge of 25 stitches and 35 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are US 2 and a US 4, which corresponds to 2.75 and 3.5 millimeters. It comes in 12 different sizes, so it is extremely size inclusive, with finished bust measurements ranging from 31 up to 66 inches or 79 up to 166 centimeters. The recommended ease is 1/3 of an inch or 1 centimeters of positive ease. This design is inspired by the mystery drama of a 16th century masquerade ball, La Mascarada. It combines mosaic and lace techniques to create a beautiful and elegant yoke panel. The sweater is worked seamlessly in the round from the top down. You add short rows for the shaping of the neckline, and from then the mosaic pattern is introduced, followed by the lace design. The sleeves and body are then separated and worked from the top to the bottom, and the cuff is worked in the same mosaic pattern as the yoke. It comes with both written and charted instructions for the lace portion, and it also comes with links to YouTube video tutorials. And since this is a pattern that's done with mosaic knitting, you only knit with one color at a time. So there are no 2 strands of yarn involved at a time, although it looks quite intricate. I think this is a stunning design, and Catherine Rain has a number of very beautiful patterns in her portfolio, so if you do not know her yet, you should definitely check her out. The next design that I would like to show you is called the Sazi sweater by Yoko Johnston. Yoko is a Japanese that is living in Australia, and she published this sweater pattern in December of 2023. It is knitted with a worsted weight yarn with a gauge of 17 stitches and 24 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 7 and a US 8, which corresponds to 4.5 and 5 millimeters. The sweater comes in 5 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 39.5 up to 53.5 inches or 100 up to 136 centimeters. There is no information about the recommended ease, but it is stated in the pattern description that the model is wearing the sweater with 8 inches or 20 centimeters of positive ease. The design is knitted from the top down and features saddle shoulders. Sazi means spoon in Japanese. On the sweater, it is characterized by a diamond shape. A series of bold diamond patterns are featured on the front body, and smaller diamond patterns are placed on the sleeves. And the back body is knitted completely in stockinette stitch. Next, I would like to show you a design by Amber O'Brien. Amber O'Brien is one of the best known names in the Australian knitting scene, and she is very well known for her color work and also her shawl designs. But the design that I have picked out to show you is a hat called the Azurine hat, and it came out in January of 2018. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 28 stitches and 35 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 2, and that corresponds to a 2.75 millimeter. It comes in 2 different sizes with finished measurements of 19 to 24 inches or 48.5 up to 61 centimeters for the head circumference, and a height of 7.5 up to 8.5 inches or 19 up to 21.5 centimeters. Now the hat is knitted from the brim up and features this beautiful all over lace design, and it also comes with a matching cowl if you would like to create a little set for yourself. Next up is a design called the Wild Iris Sweater by Jie, who is also known as Red JK Design. This pattern came out in September of 2024 and is knitted with a fingering weight yarn held together with a lace weight yarn to create a DK weight gauge of 20 stitches and 33 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 3 and a US 4, which corresponds to 3.5 and 4 millimeter needles. It comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 34 up to 65.25 inches or 85 up to 163 centimeters. It is recommended to be worn with 4 to 6 inches or 10 to 15 centimeters of positive ease. Wild Iris is a top-down sweater with fitted saddle shoulders and reversed satin sleeves that are knit seamlessly in one piece. Next up, I would like to introduce you to OGE Knitwear Designs, who is Vera. She has a huge pattern portfolio. I think she has more than 280 designs, and she designs mainly for babies and children. But since I know that a lot of you like to knit for your own children or grandchildren just as much as I do, I wanted to introduce you to her beautiful patterns, and the one that I have picked out to show you is called the Lantana Sweater P284. This one came out in June of 2025 and is knitted with a sport weight yarn with a gauge of 24 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 4, which corresponds to 3.5 millimeters. It comes in 8 different sizes, all the way from newborn up to 12 years old. The sweater is worked from the bottom up in one piece until the underarms. You will then split for the back and front and knit them straight, so back and forth. There is an option for the sleeve stitches to pick up around the sleeve opening and knit in the round, or alternatively you could knit the sleeves flat and then sew them into position. The pattern has drop shoulders and has been designed to be a relaxed fit. Now, I think this is an absolutely beautiful design and I love her overall design aesthetic, and like I said, please check her out if you also like to knit for babies and children. And let's move on to a completely different design now, and I would like to introduce you to Jake Hensler and his stunning and unique blanket patterns. The pattern that I have picked out to show you is called the Paris Building Blocks, but you should definitely have a look at his complete portfolio because he designs very interesting patterns. This pattern was released in October of 2024 and is knitted with a fingering weight yarn with a gauge of 30 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 2.5, which corresponds to 3 millimeters. It comes in one size and the finished measurements are around 25.25 per 37 inches or 64 per 94 centimeters. The pattern consists of a series of 8 chart patterns for knitted blocks, which can be sewn together into larger panels, such as a blanket. And the blocks of this pattern have been designed on buildings of Paris. Now, he used a 100% cotton yarn to create his sample, and he states that you will need between 35 and 40 grams of yarn for each of the 8 panels. Now, I hope this video inspired you to explore the beauty of Australian knitting, whether you are drawn to elegant lace socks, beginner-friendly sweater patterns, or bold, colorful yokes. I hope there was some inspiration in this video for you. When you think of knitting, what comes to mind? Some cozy sweaters or maybe some delicate lace? But on a small group of islands in the North Atlantic, knitting became something else entirely. It was survival, it was culture, and it created patterns so iconic they spread from fishermen's cottages all the way to royal wardrobes. Welcome to Shetland, home of Fair Isle, legendary lace, and a wool so treasured that knitters around the world can't get enough of it. In this video, we'll explore Shetland's stunning landscapes and the sheep that made its wool famous. We'll look at the delicate art of Shetland lace and, of course, the bold beauty of Fair Isle knitting. I'll take you inside the story of Shetland Wool Week, introduce you to the two big wool producers, Jamieson and Smith and Jamieson's of Shetland, and highlight some incredible contemporary designers. Let's get started. Shetland lies far to the north of Scotland, closer to Norway than to Edinburgh. The landscape is dramatic: rocky cliffs, rolling hills, endless skies, and of course, sheep grazing everywhere. Life here wasn't easy. The weather was harsh, the soil was thin, and families struggled to grow some crops. They relied on fishing and some small-scale crofting to survive. But there was one animal that was perfectly adapted to this harsh environment: Shetland sheep. They're small and hardy, able to live on rough pasture and withstand the elements. Over centuries, they developed a wool that is fine, yet also strong and durable. And because Shetland was so remote, the breed remained relatively pure. I do have one skein of Shetland yarn here to show you. Unfortunately, it is not from a Shetland yarn company, but a German one, but it is still 100% Shetland wool. And if you have a closer look, I hope you'll be able to tell that this wool is fine, yet also grippy and has some texture to it, making it perfect to knit these traditional Fair Isle colorwork motifs. The wool became central to the economy, not just the culture. When we talk about Shetland knitting, we talk about the story of Shetland sheep, their resilience, and the people who turned a necessity into artistry. One of the most breathtaking expressions of Shetland knitting is lace. In the 19th century, Shetland lace gained international fame. Delicate shawls were exported to the British mainlands, fetching high prices in London. These weren't just pretty accessories, they were proof of incredible craftsmanship. Imagine a lace shawl so thin that it could be pulled through a wedding ring. But behind the beauty, lace knitting was also labor. Women knitted these lace shawls in order to support their families, often working in dimly lit croft houses, and there was also a lot of pressure because mistakes could mean lost income. The legacy lives on today. Museums and local groups preserve historic lace patterns, and contemporary designers reinterpret them for modern knitters. Shetland lace is more than an art form. It's a symbol of resilience and pride. Of course, the most famous Shetland knitting tradition is Fair Isle. Named after one of the smaller islands in the Shetlands, Fair Isle knitting is a stranded colorwork technique using just 2 colors per row. With natural colors and limited shades available, knitters became masters in combining colorways in such a way that they would almost seem to glow with light. Fair Isle knitting entered global fashion in the 1920s when the Prince of Wales wore a Fair Isle sweater in public. Suddenly, everyone wanted to copy his style. Shetland knitters worked tirelessly to supply the rising demand, but there was also tension between maintaining traditions and catering to the growing markets. Today, Fair Isle knitting is beloved around the globe. Contemporary designers play with bold color palettes, but the traditional motifs, star crosses, and the famous OXO pattern that you can see here remain instantly recognizable. If you knit a Fair Isle pattern or garment, you are joining a conversation across knitters through the generations. Shetland Wool Week is an annual festival that takes place in the fall. It is the biggest celebration of Shetland wool and traditional knitting in the world. Every year they welcome hundreds of visitors, connected by a curiosity and love of the sustainable natural fiber and their island's rich textile heritage. It's a week full of exhibitions, markets, shows and talks, a festival where knitters from the islands and worldwide come together. And if you are watching this video right after its release, Shetland Wool Week 2025 has just kicked off. The theme of this year is Shetland Ways, a way to celebrate the traditional Shetland knitting techniques that are still honored today. The organizers wanted to center not just what is made, but how it is made. The way stitchers use old tools, share knowledge, carry on techniques that might have been in danger of fading. The patron for 2025 is the Shetland Guild of Spinners, Knitters, Weavers and Dyers, more than 70 members strong. They were chosen because of their long commitment to preserving Shetland's textile heritage. And what's especially exciting is the fact that the head pattern for this year's Shetland Wool Week, which is called the Al Our Turi, that was designed by Rachel Hunter, who is also a guild member, and it draws inspiration from a 1930s all over Fair Isle sweater pattern. The head knitting pattern is released right as Shetland Wool Week kicks off, so that knitters can join together and work on this pattern in a huge knit-along short cal and exchange ideas for colors and just keep each other company while knitting this hat. Each year there's also a Shetland Wool Week annual that comes out, and the 2025 edition was just published and contains 8 patterns, and here you can see a couple of them. If the Shetland sheep provide the wool, then there are 2 yarn companies who turn the wool into the yarn that knitters love: Jamieson and Smith and Jamiesons of Shetland. It is easy to confuse them due to the similar names, but their stories are different. Jamieson and Smith, often just called J&S, was founded in the 1930s. They buy fleeces from all over Shetland and carefully sort and grade them, and their yarns are valued for their authenticity. Their flagship yarn is called the 2-ply jumper weight, and it comes in over 100 different colorways, and it's perfect for knitting Fair Isle patterns. Jamiesons of Shetland, on the other hand, is a family-owned business, and it was founded in the 1890s. It is now in the 5th generation, and this company does everything from the sheep all the way up to the finished skein. They own the only spinning mill in Shetland, which is located in Sandnes, and they spin, dye and create the yarn there. Both of these companies keep the Shetland wool industry alive, each of them in their own way. And for knitters, they provide the connection from the sheep all the way up to the finished skein, whether you are aiming to knit a delicate lace shawl or a Fair Isle garment. So the sun has decided to shine extremely bright today. That's why I quickly had to close the blinds, and I hope you'll be able to see me better now. So let's move on to some of the amazingly talented contemporary Shetland knitwear designers now. So the first pattern that I would like to show you is a lace shawl, and it is called the Sleds Shawl L252 by Gladys Imidro. This is a pattern that was re-released by Jamieson and Smith, and it is based on an original pattern from the 1980s, and that was designed by Gladys Imidro. It is a 2-ply shawl that makes a beautiful hat for everyday use, but could also be used for a christening. J&S redeveloped this pattern, and it's now available in written and charted form, and it's knit in the Shetland Supreme 2-ply lace. The finished size of this shawl is 45 inches per 45 inches, so it is a square shawl. And I also wanted to show you another lace shawl pattern, and this one is called the Damakkel Iris Stole by Anne Junsen Designs. This one was part of the Shetland Wool Week annual of 2019, but is now also available as an individual pattern. It's knitted in the Jamiesons of Shetland Ultra Lace Weight, which has a yardage of 194 meters per 25 gram ball. So just imagine how fine this yarn is. The finished measurements of this stole are 163 centimeters or 64 inches in the length and 51 centimeters or 20 inches in the width. It is worked flat and the pattern rows are worked on both the right side and the wrong side of the stole. And I also wanted to show you another design of this designer because I think it's just so unique and special. Here's the picture, and the pattern is called Anne's Lace Fence, and she came out with this design in October of 2019. So this fence is actually knitted with a wire, and you of course have to make sure that you secure it to some kind of pole. But I think this looks just so interesting, and I can imagine how fitting it must be to have such a lace shawl in an environment like Shetland. The next pattern I would like to show you is a beautiful lace cardigan called the Marin's Cardigan by Hazel Lawrenson. This was part of the Shetland Wool Week Annual of 2022, and it's not available as an individual pattern, but you can still purchase this annual on the website of Shetland Wool Week, which I'm going to link for you in the description box along with everything else that I'm talking about in this video. The Marin is actually a traditional lace pattern which was created by Marian Henderson from Anst, which is Shetland's most northerly isle in the early 1930s, and Marin is Shetland's dialect for Marian. The next pattern I would like to show you is called the Corcolet Hat, and it is a design by Alison Randall. Now this is a very traditional Fair Isle hat that was published in October of 2024, and she used the Jamiesons of Shetland spindrift to knit it. The Corcolet hat features an all-over pattern that's knitted in shades of purple and a pop of red. And in the past, to produce yarns of red and purple color, wool had to be dyed using the lichen Lecanora tartarea. And this lichen can be found abundantly on rocks, and the dye that's made from it was called corcolet in Shetland, hence the name of this design. Now the pattern comes in only one adult size, but you can adapt the size of the finished hat by going up or down a needle size. The next design that I would like to show you is called the Fleurs Cowl. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, I am so sorry, but it is a design by Gudrun Johnston, and this one is part of a book that Gudrun Johnston wrote together with Mary Jane Mucklestone, and the book is called The Grand Shetland Adventure Knits, and it was published by Line in October of 2023. The cowl is worked in the round from a chart, and you begin with a provisional cast on. The life stitches from both ends are then grafted together, and that results in a double layered fabric. And when you wear it, you can tuck the graft away towards the inside of the cowl so that it is not visible. The next pattern that I would like to show you is called the Maury Cardigan, and it is a design by Ella Gordon and was published in October of 2018. This pattern is knitted from the bottom up and is steeked, but the only part of the cardigan that is steeked is the colorwork yoke at the top. So you knit flat for most of the body and only knit in the round for the colorwork portion and then steek that one. Now Ella Gordon is a talented knitwear designer and has a number of beautiful patterns available in her portfolio, but she also works at Jamieson and Smith, and when I by coincidence got into contact with her through Jamieson and Smith, she also very kindly allowed me to use some of her stunning photography from her website to show in this video in order to be able to give you a better impression of the beautiful and unique landscape of Shetland. So thank you very much, Ella. Another Fair Isle cardigan that I would like to show you is called the Strom Cardigan by Rachel Hunter. This was part of the Shetland Wool Week Annual of 2020, but it can also be purchased as an individual pattern. So this is also knitted from the bottom up and uses the Jamieson and Smith 2-ply jumper weights, so their signature yarn. I really like the bright and vibrant colorways that she chose for the contrast colors, which I think gives this traditional design a very modern twist. Let's have a look at another cardigan now, and it is a design by Donna Smith called the Scar-Pygard cardigan. It came out in September of 2022 as part of her book called Langsund, a Shetland yarn, but it can also be purchased as an individual pattern. Now, Langsund is the name of Donna Smith's own yarn line. So she has a couple of sheep herself, and the yarn comes from the fleeces of her sheep and the sheep of her neighbors, which she then has processed into a yarn. And she also dyes some of the yarn herself using natural dyes, which, being a natural yarn dyer myself, of course, I absolutely love. And I also really like this cardigan design. I think it looks sophisticated and understated while being classic. It is a bit more of a fitted design, and I think it looks just so wonderful. Of course, especially with this gorgeous Shetland landscape as a backdrop in the pictures. The name Scar-Pygard comes from a book that Donna read while she designed the cardigan. It is a story that's set in the 18th century Shetland about families that were evicted from their homes to make way for sheep. And Scar-Pygard was the fictional croft where the novel was set. And there's another design by Donna Smith that I would like to show you because it's just way too cute not to. So this is called the Barbel Mug Cozy, and it came out in April of 2017. This is a quick little project that features the popular sheep patterns from the Barbel hat, and it can help you practice some skills as well as keep your tea or coffee warm, of course. You knit in the round with 2 colors at a time, and then you establish a steek and cut the steek and knit an I-cord bind off. It also uses very small quantities of yarn, so it's also a great way of using up those leftover yarns. So I know a couple of you have never steeked before and are a bit scared of it, and I am exactly the same. But when I saw this pattern, I thought this would be the absolute perfect steeking project. And by the way, in case you recognized the motif, this was taken from the Barbel hat that Donna Smith had designed as the hat pattern for the Shetland Wool Week in 2015 when she was the patron of the Shetland Wool Week. And let's have a look at one more pattern from Donna Smith, and this one is called the Jemima's Jumper and Cowl. This was part of the Shetland Wool Week annual of 2022, and it's not available as an individual pattern, but you can still get the 2022 edition. It is an all-over colorwork sweater that is based on an item from the Shetland Museum's textiles collection and is reinterpreted by Donna Smith. The original jumper was created in the 1980s by Jemima Randall, who was a knitter and hand spinner from Unst and lived her adult life in Aberdeen on the mainland. So the pattern itself is knitted completely in the round, and the armholes are later on steeked in order to attach the sleeves, and it also comes with this separate cowl. And since the theme of the knitting patterns in this video somehow seems to be cardigans, there is one more cardigan that I definitely would like to show you, and it is called the Sea Breeze cardigan by Elizabeth Johnston. This is also part of the Shetland Wool Week 2022 annual, and it was actually on the cover of the magazine, and I think it's just breathtakingly beautiful. It is an all-over colorwork cardigan, and Elizabeth herself describes the Sea Breeze as a study in blue, evoking images of the sea around Shetland in a fresh breeze, with a touch of lighter colors as the sun catches ripples on the water. It's a long cardigan with drop shoulders and no sleeves, and it can be worn in a waterfall or a crossover style. And of course, you could easily add or subtract length to make it fit your own preferences. In order to really understand Shetland knitting, you have to understand how deeply it was woven into everyday's life. Knitting was not just a pastime, it was survival. Women and children knitted constantly in order to support their family. But there was also pride. Knitting patterns were passed down from mother to daughter through the generations, and it became kind of a living heritage. The knitting traditions have remained and survived, while over time again and again being threatened by industrialization and just modern life in general. What's remarkable is how Shetland knitting hasn't disappeared. It has been revived, carried forward, and strengthened. Museums, events like the Shetland Wool Week, groups, communities have carried this tradition forward. And knitters worldwide honor the Shetland knitting tradition every time they cast on a fairer pattern. Shetland shows us that knitting is more than a craft. It is a thread that connects landscape, people, and history. It's a story of resilience, creativity, and community, and a story that inspires knitters worldwide. Today we'll explore the story of German knitting, how it started, how it evolved, and the designers who are shaping its future today, along with 18 of their stunning knitting patterns. And for once I'll be able to pronounce everything correctly because I'm from Germany as well. What makes German knitting so special? Let's find out. The story of knitting in Germany is a fascinating blend of practicality, craftsmanship, and quiet artistry. For centuries, knitting here wasn't just about leisure, it was about survival. Especially in rural areas, families spun and knitted with their own wool, and they made everything from socks to mitts to sturdy sweaters to withstand the long, cold winters. Especially in the alpine regions of Bavaria and the Allgäu, knitting became a highly developed craft. Patterns were often passed down through generations, and just like in other parts of Europe, local traditions emerged. Bavarian and Austrian style socks, known for their intricate twisted stitches and cable patterns, are still admired today. During both world wars, knitting gained another layer of meaning. Women were encouraged to knit for soldiers, and they produced endless socks, scarves, and gloves. Old knitting leaflets from that time show how deeply the craft was tied to everyday life and to the emotional fabric of families separated by war. After the 1950s, when mass-produced clothing became affordable and widely available, knitting lost its meaning as a necessity, but it never disappeared completely. In East Germany, many women continued to knit, partly because Western fashion just wasn't available to them, but also because knitting offered creative freedom and a sense of individuality. Yarn was often repurposed from old garments, and patterns were traded informally between friends. Then, in the early 2000s, knitting began to resurface, but not as something old-fashioned, but more as a mindful, creative practice. Through the rise of social media, knitters were able to connect globally with each other, and the joy of creating sustainable handmade clothing became more and more popular. Today, knitting in Germany blends tradition with modern design, a craft that honors the past but still feels completely at home in the present. Of course, the story of knitting is also a story of wool, and Germany has a surprisingly large amount of native sheep breeds, each with their own distinct character. The most popular one is probably the Merino Landschaf, a German breed developed in the 18th century, crossing local land sheep with merinos from Spain. It became the backbone of German wool production for centuries. Here you can see an example of one of my own naturally dyed yarns that is dyed on a 100% German merino wool yarn. The fiber is soft and durable and also wonderfully elastic, so it's ideal for sweaters and accessories as well. You definitely cannot compare the German merino yarn to an Australian merino, for example. It is a lot less soft, and that's due to the harsher climate here in Germany compared to Australia. Then there is the Rhön Schaf, a very charming breed from the Rhön Mountains. Its wool is slightly coarser but warm and resilient, perfect for rustic knits, outerwear or home textiles. The breed itself is part of Germany's cultural heritage, and its conservation is supported by local farmers and craftspeople. In the north, you will find the Heidschnucke, a hardy moorland sheep from Lower Saxony. Its wool is grey and quite robust, more suited for outer garments and traditional clothing than delicate next to skin wear. There are also smaller regional breeds like the Coburger Fuchsschaf, and I'm going to show you an example of an undyed skein of its yarn. It is best known for its golden fleece and its reddish undertone. There's also the Bentheimer Landschaf with its creamy white wool, and both of these breeds have gained attention in recent years as knitters look for more sustainable and local fibers. And this love for natural, sustainable materials is mirrored in German's yarn industry as well. Companies like Rosy Green Wool have become pioneers in creating very transparent, sustainable, traceable yarns. Their yarns are GOTS certified organic and spun in Europe under fair conditions. The focus on softness, quality, and environmental responsibility reflects a distinctly German approach, doing things thoughtfully and with care. Since May of 2025, Rosy Green Wool belongs to Pasquali, another well-known name in the German yarn industry. Pasquali sources luxury fibers like cashmere, yak, and silk while maintaining transparency about origin and sustainability. Their blends, such as Camel Decay or Suave, are beautiful examples of how traditional yarn production can meet modern values. Then there's La Mana, which is a company founded in Bielefeld, and it is known for their minimalist aesthetic and cohesive color palettes. Their yarns like Como and Premia are light, soft, and elegant, often paired with modern Scandinavian-inspired designs. More playful and artistic is Schoppelwolle, which is best known for its Zauberball, the yarn that introduced gradients to a wide array of knitters worldwide. And Atelier Citron is another long-standing brand that focuses on producing the yarns entirely in Germany with a specific focus on eco-friendly dyeing processes and quality control. Together, these yarn companies show how diverse the German yarn industry has become, but still always maintaining its focus of sustainability, quality, and craftsmanship. Germany may not be the first country that comes to mind when thinking of modern knitwear designs, but it's home to a growing community of designers that blend craftsmanship with minimal, modern wearable styles. What's fascinating is that the German knitting aesthetic often reflects the country itself. Clean lines, functionality, and timeless designs, yet with a touch of warmth and individuality. Let's have a look at some of Germany's most talented knitwear designers and their amazing patterns now. And as always, since I unfortunately cannot show you all of the beautiful German knitting patterns that are out there, I have put together a bundle on Ravelry with a lot more patterns from German knitwear designers that I'm going to link for you in the description box below, along with everything else that I'm talking about in this video. We are going to start with one of the most popular names in the German knitting scene, Isabel Krämer. Her designs like Il Grande Favorito and Yume combine timeless shapes with subtle details that make them special. She's known for her relaxed wearable style and patterns that flatter a wide range of knitters. To date, Isabel has published more than 240 knitting patterns, so you can imagine that it was quite difficult for me to choose which ones to show you. And one of them that stood out particularly to me is called Fiorellino, which means little flower in Italian, and it came out in March of 2025. It has this beautiful textured yoke that is created by simple knit and purl stitches, and it's a short-sleeved tee, which is knitted from the top down in one piece and contains short rows for a better fit. It's knitted in a fingering weight yarn. She used the Mayak Fior di Lino, which is a blend of 50% wool, 35% yak, and 15% linen. And Isabel Krämer even designed the color palette for this space as a collaboration with Mayak. Another pattern from Isabel Krämer that is very beautiful is called Heimathafen, which means home port in English. And I really like this design because at first glance, it looks like a simple striped sweater, but it is not a simple striped sweater. The stripes have this special twist to them, and it's created by a dip stitch. I think this is a very classic and elegant design that would look amazing in a wide number of different color combinations. It's knitted from the top down and contains short rows to shape the back neck, and the increases are done both on the yoke and then also as raglan increases. And this design was also knitted with the Mayak Fior di Lino. Next up, let's talk about Johanna Gerisch. And she has this beautiful, poetic, feminine design aesthetic that often features earthy tones and natural yarns. Her designs feel somehow slow, intentional, and deeply wearable to me. First pattern that I would like to show you is called the Pierre dress, and I think this is such a showstopper. It's a stunning masterpiece in my opinion, and I would love to knit this one myself in the future. It's knitted with a fingering weight yarn. She made two different versions, one with a 100% silk yarn and one with a merino cotton blend, both from Knitting for Olive. It's this beautiful, elegant, fitted all-over lace dress that is worked from the top down in one piece. And looking at the pattern pictures, it looks to me like she created two different versions, one with this keyhole detail in the back and one with the buttons and the open back. She describes this pattern as very advanced, so I would only recommend it to knit if you are an experienced knitter yourself. And I also wanted to show you a cardigan pattern from Johanna Gerisch called the Emanuel cardigan. This cardigan might look rather basic from the front. It has this deep V-neck, but on the back you can see this beautiful lace panel, which just makes it a very special design. I also like the puffy sleeves and the all-over cozy look of it. It's knitted with a fingering weight yarn and a silk mohair yarn held together, which creates this cozy look and a soft halo. And it is worked top down with raglan increases. Let's move on to the next designer, and I would like to talk about Eleanor Mortensen. Now, Eleanor Mortensen's designs all feel very cohesive to me. She very often includes color work and also very often in the form of color work yokes. The first design that I've picked out to show you is called the Mabon sweater. And Mabon is a Welsh term, and it refers to the autumnal equinox, a time of equal day and night, balance and reflection. I think she chose a stunning color combination. The sweater looks like it's glowing, and it reminds me of the sun peeking through on a fall day where there are lots of leaves on the ground. It's knitted from the top down and has this beautiful colorwork motif on the yoke, as well as the sleeve cuffs and the bottom hem. The yarn she used is a fingering weight yarn with a rather small gauge of 26 stitches and 33 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. And the second design of Eleanor Mortensen that I would like to show you is called the Golden Poppy sweater. What I really like about this sweater is the fact that the colorwork part is so large and continues even below the yoke after you've split for the body and the sleeves. And the floral motif is also very beautiful in my opinion. This sweater is knitted from the top down and the fit is loose on the body and narrow on the sleeves. Next up, let's talk about Melanie Berg. Melanie Berg was one of the first German knitwear designers to gain international recognition, and she is best known for her shawl designs. Patterns like Drachenfels and On the Spice Market helped define a whole era of indie design on Ravelry. What I personally love about her design aesthetic is that she bridges traditional techniques with modern color sensibility. The pattern, or the first pattern of hers that I have picked out to show you, is a shawl pattern, and it is called Ghost Dancer. I really like the geometric motifs and the 3 different sections of this triangular shawl. The color work is done by mosaic knitting, meaning that you are only knitting with one color at a time, which means it's far less complicated to knit than it looks. And there is also a sweater pattern from Melanie that I would like to show you because I think it's just stunning, and this one is called Stone Sugar. It is knitted with a DK and a lace weight yarn held together and has this gorgeous color work, which is a bit unusually placed at the lower part of the body. I think it's just such a unique and elegant design. The sweater is knitted from the top down and has this beautiful large turtleneck. The relaxed fit provides ease and freedom, making it the ideal choice for lazy afternoons at home or casual outings, according to Melanie. Let's move on to the designer whose pattern I am wearing today, and I'm talking about Anke Strick. Anke Strick is known for her designs that are classic wardrobe staples, a bit minimalist in their aesthetic, but also enjoyable to knit due to her favorite construction of seamless and top down. The pattern that I am wearing today is called Slanted Sleeven, and if you are having a look at my version here and the original sample in the pattern, you will notice that I have made quite a number of modifications to my version. I knitted my cardigan a lot longer, and I also used a completely different gauge. My gauge was larger, so I used a thicker yarn. So that's why, even though I knitted the smallest size, my sweater is not as fitted as the one in the sample. I knitted my sweater with yarn from the Swedish yarn company Hönnröjer, so the Nutiden yarn held double. And I do have to admit, although I loved knitting this cardigan, I think I have not worn it since I finished it. And I think this is due to a couple of reasons. First, I somehow managed to not space the buttonholes evenly. So this cardigan is supposed to be buttoned, but I am now not really sure how to approach that. I have thought about sewing it close and, just wearing it more of a sweater. But yeah, I'm just not sure. I'm also not really sure if this is a color that really suits me. I think it's a bit too warm toned for me. So overall, I think it is a lovely design, but my version just didn't turn out as I was expecting. There is another pattern from Anke Strick that I have had in my queue for the longest time, and it is called the Garden Pullover, which also comes as a cardigan version. And if you purchase both patterns, you even get the second pattern for 50% off, which I think is great. I really like the V-neck shaping of this design and also how relaxed, drapey and cozy her sample looks. She knitted it with one strand of Knitting for Olive's cotton merino held together with a lace weight Surrey alpaca silk yarn, and it is worked seamlessly from the top down. Let's have a look at a completely different design aesthetic now, and I would like to introduce you to Katharina, also known as Ducati. Ducati is best known for her color work sock patterns, and her patterns overall feel very cohesive in style or aesthetic, in my opinion, and she really knows how to play with those geometric shapes and the different color combinations. The first pattern that I would like to show you is called the Slow Down Socks, and it's this stunning all over color work pattern with flowers and even a little snail on the heel, and that's just so cute in my opinion. I also really like the description that she put on the Ravelry project page. She says, "Growing can be slow, so can knitting. Take time for yourself. Immerse yourself in your knitting and let a sea of blossoms and leaves grow on your socks stitch by stitch. In the middle of your work, the little snail reminds you that everything takes time and is allowed to do so. One thing to note about the pattern is the fact that it only comes in one size and you cast on 74 stitches, and if you need a different width you need to use a different needle size. Now, if you're watching this video right after its release, I think the next pattern comes at the perfect time, and it is called the Winter Dudes and comes in 3 different sizes. Katharina describes this pattern as follows. Wintry dudes dance around your legs. They carry presents in their backpacks and are looking forward to Christmas and snow flurries. You can choose your favorite motif from 2 different charts or simply knit both in one pair of socks. Another beloved designer in the German knitting community is Susanne Müller, also known as Paula Strickt. Her patterns are known for their clean lines, subtle textures, and an effortless everyday elegance. There's a calm simplicity to her designs, pieces you can wear again and again that never go out of style. The first pattern of Susanne Müller that I would like to show you is called the Coming Soon sweater. And I think this one looks particularly classic and elegant yet cozy at the same time to me. I really love it in the navy color, but as you can see here, it also looks great in beige, and I think it would be beautiful in basically any color. Unfortunately, the description on the Ravelry project page is only available in German, but I've translated it for you, and the sweater is knitted in an all-over fisherman's rib and from the top down, and she recommends a positive ease of 10 to 15 centimeters or 4 to 6 inches for this relaxed fit. Her most popular pattern to date is called the Sabai top, and it is this sleeveless top that looks great both on its own but also under a blazer, as you can see here. She knitted a number of different versions, which I think is so helpful because it gives you a better sense of how you can style this top in a number of different ways. It has this beautiful boat line, and she says it's super easy to knit, requires only a few techniques, and is therefore ideal for beginner knitters. The pattern comes with 2 versions. You have one with this ribbed border, and there's also a second one that's completely knitted in stockinette stitch without the ribbing. Another wonderful designer who combines traditional craftsmanship with modern silhouettes is Gudrun Fesel, who is based in Munich in Bavaria. The first pattern of Gudrun Fesel that I wanted to show you is called the Hilly cardigan, and I think this is just a very unique piece. It contains a zipper, and she labels it as an advanced pattern, but you could also opt to make this cardigan without the zipper if you don't want to sew it in, which she recommends doing by hand. The Hilly cardigan is a raglan cardigan with a silhouette and collar shape that is inspired by the classic bomber jackets, and the graphic bubble stitch pattern and the zipper also emphasize this look, and it is knitted from the top down. Another beautiful design from hers is called the Hope top, which looks very simple but has this unusual edging. It is this very pretty sleeveless summer top with a deep V-neck that is loose fitting and worked in stockinette stitch from the top down. The delicate hem is made in a rib, and the neckline and armholes feature this beautiful integrated cable. As a German knitter myself, I think it's so wonderful to see how our knitting culture has evolved from a handmade necessity to a creative expression that is shared globally with knitters all around the world. So, what defines German knitting today? To me, knitting in Germany tells a story of craftsmanship, creativity, and care. And even though our stitches might look different than the ones from our ancestors, the feeling is still the same. The slow movement, the calm, and the joy of creating something by hand. If you love color work, textured knits that feel timeless, and wool that tells a story, you're going to adore Swedish knitting. Today we're traveling from the windswept coast of Gotland all the way to the forests of Dalarna, spotlighting 13 different knitting patterns and the talented designers behind them. So, we are going to start with a quick weather snapshot so that you'll understand why Swedish knits are so warm and practical, followed by some heritage highlights. Then we'll have a look at 13 Swedish knitting patterns and the designers behind them, and a yarn company spotlight, including Anorak Air and their popular Nutiden yarn. Let's get started. Before we dive into the knitting patterns, let's have a quick look at the weather in Sweden, because the weather really shapes what knitters make. Sweden stretches a long way north to south, so the climate shifts as you go. In the south, winters are cold but fairly moderate. In the far north, winter is truly Arctic. Think mild oceanic in the south, continental in the middle, and subarctic up north. Take Stockholm, Sweden's capital, as a reference. In January, days hover around 0 degrees Celsius, nights dip below freezing. In July, comfortable highs around the low 20 degrees Celsius. Real seasons, icy sidewalks in the winter and breezy evenings in the summer. Head to Kiruna in Lapland, and midwinter is a totally different story. Persistent cold with deep freezes. Perfect Lovikka mitten weather. Daylight matters too. In December, Stockholm gets only a handful of daylight hours. Go north to Kiruna and you'll experience polar night for a stretch. In summer, you have the midnight sun. Long dark winters mean serious warmth in the wardrobe. That's why Swedish knitting leans into thick, fulled mittens that cut wind and wet. The två ends stickning technique, meaning that you create an especially dense and durable fabric. Structured color work in non-superwash wool that holds its shape, and plenty of layer-friendly sweaters that you can wear most of the year. Keep that in mind when we are going to look at the knitting patterns later on. Function first with the beautiful Nordic aesthetic on top. When people talk about Swedish knitting, 4 threads keep coming up again and again. Bohus stickning, två ends stickning, Lovikka mittens, and the glow of Gotland wool. Bohus stickning began as a local relief project in the city of Bohuslän and later on turned into a very famous design cooperative. It began during World War II and was created in order to provide income for poor families. Led by Emma Jakobsson, knitters created ultra-refined color work. Whisper soft halos, subtle shading, and painterly yokes that almost looked hand-drawn. Hand-knit garments sold in boutiques in Sweden and abroad, and that aesthetic still inspires knitwear designers today. If Bohus is painterly and airy, the next Swedish knitting tradition shows us that Swedish knitting can also lean dense and durable, which is of course perfect for harsh winters. This tradition is called the två ends stickning, meaning two-end knitting, and creates a fabric that is especially dense through this special technique where you are working with 2 yarns at a time and those are wrapped around each other while knitting so that they create an extra dense fabric. It's slow, meditative, and incredibly warm. And speaking of warmth, there is a very famous Swedish mitten that practically defines cozy, and that is the Lovikka mitten, also known as Lovikka vante. Up in Norrbotten, in the village of Lovikka, the knitter Erika Aitama designed the classic Lovikka mitten or Lovikka vante in the 1890s. You knit them oversized, fold them for extra warmth, brush them soft, and often add embroidery at the cuff. Perfect for a deep winter. If you're not familiar with the term fulling, it basically means that once you're done knitting the mitten, you wash and ruffle them, and that creates a very soft and comfortable to wear fabric while still keeping its very well insulating properties. So we've seen artistry, structure, and practicality, and the 4th pillar is what makes Swedish knits feel and look so special: the Gotland fiber. Gotland sheep grow long silky curls in a spectrum of grays, Spun in it, you get unmistakable luster and gentle drape. Gotland yarn is gorgeous for drapery projects like shawls, wraps, or elegant garments. It also looks very beautiful when it is dyed because due to its natural gray color, the fibers take up the dye in a very moody and subtle way. Let's have a look at some knitting patterns now. As always, I have created a huge bundle with different Swedish knitting patterns on Ravelry. It's more than 80 different patterns, but unfortunately I cannot show all of them in this video. That's why I'm going to put a link to the bundle in the description box along with everything else that I'm talking about in this video. The first pattern that I would like to show you is called Vintervitt, and it is a beautiful design by Sara Jansson. It came out in December of 2022 and it is this gorgeous colorwork sweater. It is knitted with an Aran weight yarn, so I imagine it's very warm and knits up rather quickly. It's worked from the bottom up. The body and the sleeves are worked in the round from the lower edge to the underarms and then joined to work the yoke in the round. I think it looks absolutely beautiful with the yarns that she chose. This tweedy yarn, especially for the main color, looks fantastic in my opinion. It almost looks like little snowflakes on the body. And I think the colors are also very fitting. It reminds me a lot of these classic Swedish small cottages. And let's move on to the next pattern, and this is, let's see if I'll be able to pronounce the name. It is the Ovansjö cardigan by Maja Karlsson, and this is a free pattern that came out in November of 2020 and is published by the Swedish yarn company Järbo. This is a very elegant version of a colorwork cardigan because of the placement of the colorwork portion. And she designed her version to be a short sleeve cardigan, but I think you could easily lengthen the sleeves to be a full size sleeve. Maja Karlsson is a very talented designer. She has a huge portfolio on Ravelry with more than 200 different patterns, and she is also the author of several knitting books about mittens, socks, and cardigans. And because she has so many different patterns in her portfolio, I also wanted to show you another one of her patterns that is called the Julvanten 2024 and is again a free pattern published by the Swedish yarn company Järbo. Julvanten means Christmas mittens, and this design was inspired by a fairy tale landscape. It was originally designed for Järbo's traditional knit-along that runs during Advent season. And it features Latvian braids, two-color knitting, colorwork knitting, and an afterthought thumb. Next up is another beautiful mitten pattern called Sogosta by Sofia Kapell, and this one came out in February of 2019. And Sogosta means fairy tale town. The mitten is knitted in the round, and there are written instructions as well as charts for the colorwork. I think they look so warm and cozy, and I would absolutely love to knit them in the future. Next up is a pair of very cute slippers called the Elve slippers by, let's see, Kajsa Vuorella Fredriksson. This was a pattern that was originally published in Line's 52 Weeks of Socks book that came out in 2020, but it can also be purchased as an individual pattern. The slippers are worked in this all-over colorwork design in the round, and they come in two different sizes. Next up, let's have a look at a sweater knitting pattern called the Forestier Adult Sweater by Ann B. Hansen. And this one came out in January of 2023, and to me it looks like a perfect classic and timeless knit with these different cable panels on the body of the sweater and this beautiful moss stitch on the sleeves. It is worked bottom up and in the round until you reach the underarms, and at the underarms you split for the front and back and work those separately back and forth. Then you seam the shoulders together, and then you can work the sleeves top down and in the round by picking up the stitches along the armhole openings. And there's also a kids version available for this pattern for kids ranging from 2 to 12 years old. Anne Hansen has a very feminine and elegant design aesthetic and a large portfolio. That's why I wanted to show you another one of her beautiful designs. And this one came out in May of 2025, and it is called the Bees and Blossoms Summer Tea. Now, she knitted her version with a 100% cotton yarn and short sleeves, but I think if you wanted to have a bit more of a warmer version, you could easily lengthen the sleeves and use a wool yarn, for example. The top is worked bottom up and in the round to the underarms, and the upper front and back are worked then flat in separate pieces. The sleeves are worked in the round and top down from picking up and knitting the stitches around the armhole openings. Let's move on to the next knitting pattern, and it is called the Magnum Kadi by Josephine Åkerström, and it was published in July of 2023. It is this beautiful classic all over broken rib cardigan that I think it could be like a great wardrobe staple in pretty much any wardrobe. She says that it is the perfect cardigan for cooler summer evenings, early autumn days, or warm spring days. It is knitted from the top down in one piece, and like I said, I think it looks like the perfect classic wardrobe staple. Next up is a shawl pattern called Gemstone by Lotta H. Lötgren, and this was is part of the Line magazine issue 25 that came out in May of 2025. Lotta wanted to create a design where knitters can use their stash yarn or even their hand spun, even if they are not sure about the yardage or the thickness of the yarn they have spun up. The shawl features a repeated geometric pattern, and it uses the hand-spun multicolored yarn as the contrast color. And although it looks quite intricate, I think it isn't too complicated to knit because it's all done with mosaic knitting, which means that although you are using two different colors, you're only knitting with one color at a time. Next up is a pattern called Christmas Rose Socks by Matilda Kruse. This came out in November of 2023 and was originally designed as a mystery knit-along, but it is now available as a full pattern as well. It comes in two different sizes and contains this beautiful all-over colorwork motif. Unfortunately, there is not a lot of information on the Ravelry page, but looking at the pictures, it looks to me like it also features some Latvian braids, which always looks so beautiful in my opinion. And another design from Matilda Kruse that I wanted to show you is this one called the Artichoke Sweater. And this is this gorgeous all over lace sweater that came out in August of 2019. It is an oversized design with this airy lace pattern that is knitted in the round from the bottom up, and it also features some dropped shoulders. Next up is a design that will be a bit hard for me to pronounce, but as always I'm trying my very best, and it is called the Lärdeistika Lovikavanta by Järbö. So this is another free pattern that teaches you how to knit a pair of these traditional Lovika mittens. It comes in two different adult sizes, and the pattern suggests that you brush the mittens if you want them to be softer and firmer, or even felt them. And in the pattern there's also a chart showing you how to do this simple embroidery stitch on the cuff. Next up we have a pattern called Yule Goat Socks Mystery Knit Along by Anna Rösvärd Knitwear. And this is a very cute and Christmassy pattern that I had to show you. Unfortunately, there is not a lot of information available on the Ravelry page, but it features this beautiful colorwork motif and a Latvian braid, which I think looks absolutely gorgeous. This one came out in December of 2024. And Anna also has her own YouTube channel where she talks about all kinds of different handmade things, from knitting of course to spinning, sewing, and a lot of other cozy things. And I'm also going to link her channel for you in the description box below in case you want to check it out. Great patterns deserve great fiber. That's why I would also like to talk about a couple of Swedish yarn companies, and we're going to start with one of my personal favorite yarn companies, Honor och Air. Although I do have to put out a little disclaimer up front, I have been calling them Honor och Air for the longest time because I feel like that's what everyone says. but when I prepare for these episodes, I always put every name into Google Translate in order to at least attempt to pronounce names how they are supposed to be pronounced. And when I did that for this company, Google Translate actually told me that this is supposed to be pronounced, let me see, Hörner og Eir, and not honor og air. So I'm very sorry, I am a bit confused as to how to pronounce them correctly, but I'm sure someone from Sweden is hopefully going to watch this video and can help me out in the comments, please. And the popular yarn from this company is the Nutiden yarn, which I think is actually pronounced Nutiden in Swedish. So, what about this yarn? Let me see. It comes in plates, as you can, see here. Those are just 2 examples. I do have a lot of them here in my stash actually, because they are just so beautiful. They are very airy and light, and also very fragile when knitting with them. Let me see if I can give you a quick example. Okay, so let's see. Here is a thread of unspan yarn, and if you pull on it just slightly, it comes apart like nothing. I hope you'll be able to see that. So it is extremely fragile when knitting with it, but it turns into this very warm and durable fabric once it is knitted up. What I would usually recommend to someone who has never knitted with an unspan yarn like this is to either hold 2 strands of the Nutiden yarn together to make it a bit more durable while knitting, or maybe even holding 1 strand of the Nutiden together with 1 strand of a silk mohair, and that makes it a lot easier to manage. Nutiden yarn comes out in collections, so they do not have the web shop open at all times, but rather they release several collections throughout the year, and then you can get the beautiful colorways that they come out with. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to tell. Let me give you those 2 examples again. So this is this greenish blue, and this is a gray, but the colors always have a lot of movement. They are not flat. It's not only one color that's in them, but a lot of them. And the blends are also a bit different each time, because they use different fiber from Swedish sheep and blend them together, whatever they have available at that moment. And they also smell very sheepy. So if this is not something you enjoy, I would stay away from the Nutiden yarn, but personally I really love this way of feeling connected to the sheep where this beautiful yarn came from. Let's see, what else? Nutiden yarn is very special to knit with and also to wear. I cannot really put it into words, but whenever I put something on that is knitted with Nutiden, I feel instantly wrapped and comforted for some reason. I don't know what it is, but I can definitely highly recommend that you give it a try if you have not done so already. The next yarn company that I would like to talk about is one I have mentioned already a couple of times, and that is the company Järbo. That is a heritage yarn brand that dates back to the 1890s and comes with a broad range of different yarns and of course a huge library of knitting patterns. Most of them are available for free, which I think is absolutely wonderful and so generous of them. Järbo is actually a small town, and when the company was founded in the 1890s, the factory was established there and it was the heart of the community. And nowadays, Järbo offers more than 600 different knitting patterns, along with their yarn line, of course. And another major Swedish yarn brand that you will see all over the Nordics is Svarta Fåret. They offer rather affordable prices, a broad yarn range as well, and different knitting patterns. Sweden blends tradition and quiet modern design. Bohus nuance, the dense and durability of the 2-inch stickning, the glow of Gotland wool, and the cozy Lovikka mittens. From the windswept plains of Patagonia to the colorful street markets of Sao Paulo, South America isn't just about tango, samba, and mountain peaks. It's also home to a rich, vibrant knitting culture that blends indigenous techniques, European influences, and bold modern design. In today's video, we're diving into the knitting worlds of Chile, Argentina, and Brazil. I'm going to show you some incredible patterns from talented designers and also talk about the history and knitting traditions of South America and maybe even inspire your next cast on. I've spent a lot of time researching this video, digging into fiber traditions, discovering designers, and tracing the cultural threads that make South American knitting so special. So grab your knitting project and a cup of mate maybe, and let's explore the textures, colors, and stories behind South American knitting. Before we dive into the knitting content, let's quickly get our bearings. South America is a vast and diverse continent made up of 12 countries, including Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Peru, Colombia, and Bolivia, among others. It stretches from the equator all the way down to Patagonia, near the tip of Antarctica, so the climates are incredibly varied. You'll find everything from tropical rainforests in the Amazon to mountainous highlands in the Andes, deserts in northern Chile, and snowy plains in the south. This variety plays a big role in the kinds of fibers people use and also the type of garments that they knit. Most of South America speaks Spanish, but in Brazil the official language is Portuguese, and in addition there are a number of different indigenous languages that are spoken all throughout the continent, mainly in rural and mountainous areas. All of this cultural and geographical diversity makes South America a rich, colorful source of inspiration for the fiber arts, and there is so much to explore. South America has a long and layered textile history, one that predates colonial times by centuries. The fiber arts were and still are in some parts of the continent, especially in the Andes, a vital part of life. People spun llama, alpaca, and sheep's wool by hand, naturally dyed it with plants and minerals, and used it to knit and weave clothing, tools, and ceremonial garments. While weaving has traditionally dominated in the indigenous communities, knitting has carved out its own unique space. It's become a creative outlet, a social activity, and even a political statement in some parts of the continent. In Argentina, knitting is everywhere, from urban cafes in Buenos Aires to the windswept estancias of Patagonia. The country is also a major wool producer and very well known for its Patagonian merino, which is very soft, warm, and internationally prized. Knitting is still taught in schools, practiced socially, and often passed down through the generations. And there is even a whole yarn district in Buenos Aires called the Via Crespo, with the Avenida Scalabrini Ortiz that is lined with yarn shops. And although I have not been there yet, I have heard that this is a must visit for every fiber lover. Argentina also has strong influences from European immigration, specifically from Italy and Spain, which shows in the lace and the stitch motifs that were used in the more traditional knitting styles. In Brazil, knitting coexists with a strong lace and crochet tradition. You often find lighter weight items in Brazil suited to the warmer climate. Think airy shawls, sleeveless tops, and cotton garments. Brazil's knitting culture is closely tied to community and entrepreneurship. On local markets, you often find small business owners selling hand-knitted items, while often combining knitting and crochet to create very unique pieces. And while the weather may not demand wool sweaters, you will often find Brazilian knitters enjoying to work with lighter weight fibers, so plant-based fibers like linen, cotton, or bamboo, often in very vibrant tropical colors. In Chile, knitting connects deeply with rural traditions and modern design. The southern regions of the country, especially Chiloé Island, are known for their warm, durable knitwear. Fishermen's sweaters, ponchos, and socks are staples of the traditional handmade wardrobe. Chile also has strong indigenous textile traditions, especially among the Mapuche people, who are very well known for their geometric motifs and their natural dyeing techniques. And while they tend to focus more on woven techniques, knitters often draw inspirations from the patterns. In urban areas like Santiago, knitting has become part of the modern DIY and slow fashion movement, with young designers blending more traditional elements with contemporary design. So while the knitting traditions in South America are deeply rooted in history, they are far from frozen in time. Today, a new generation of designers is blending those traditional elements with bold colors, wearable silhouettes, and contemporary aesthetics. Let's have a look at some incredibly talented designers from Chile, Argentina, and Brazil now, and the beautiful patterns that they have created. As always, when I create these videos for my Knitting Around the World series, I have put together a bundle on Ravelry, which contains more than 100 patterns from South American knitwear designers. But since I unfortunately cannot feature all of them in this video, I'm going to link the bundle in the description box below, along with everything else I am going to mention in the video. We're going to start with Chile, and this is the very first pattern that I would like to show you. It is called the Heaven Cardigan, and it is a design by Josefina Vergara, also known as Pope Vergara. Now, Pope Vergara is a new to me designer, and I was absolutely blown away when I discovered her. I highly recommend that you check out her portfolio on Ravelry. She has so many beautiful designs that it was very tough for me to choose just two to feature in this video. She often works with beads and lace and color work and has a very unique and beautiful design aesthetic in my opinion. So I was so happy that I discovered Pope Vergara during my research. The Heaven Cardigan came out in January of 2024. And it is knitted with 2 lace weight yarns held together to create a gauge of 16 stitches and 22 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes that she used are a US 7 and a US 8, which corresponds to 4.5 and 5 millimeter needles. You will also need a hook of 0.75 millimeters, and that's to attach the beads. The design comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 85 up to 163 centimeters or 34 up to 65 inches. The recommended positive ease is 5 centimeters or 2.5 inches. The Heaven Cardigan draws inspiration from the celestial skies and the enchantment of Greek mythology. It is knitted using 2 strands of a mohair yarn to capture this essence, creating a voluminous effect reminiscent of clouds and an ethereal feel. The cardigan is worked seamlessly from the top down. You start with the back panel that features an elegant combination of beads and cable. After you have reached the desired length and have completed the increases, the back stitches are placed on hold and you start working on the front. And once you've worked both fronts, the back and front parts are joined, and then you continue knitting in one piece. Later on you add the sleeves, and the sleeves also feature some beads on the ribbing. So like I mentioned, it was extremely difficult for me to choose one design from Pope Vergara to show you in this video, and that's why I decided to show you another one, just because her designs are just too beautiful not to showcase them. So the second design that I would like to show you is called the Morning Fog Tea, and this one came out in July of 2024. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn held together with a lace weight silk mohair to create a gauge of 22 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2.5 and a US 5, which corresponds to 3 and 3.75 millimeter needles. You will need a crochet hook as well, also to attach the beads, and it's the same size as the one in the previous design, so 0.75 millimeter. The tee comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 86 up to 158 centimeters or 34 up to 62.25 inches. The recommended ease is 6 centimeters or 2.5 inches. The morning fog tee is knitted in one piece from the top down, so it's knitted in the round. It contains short rows in the neck to ensure a good fit. This garment contains a variety of different techniques. You have the lace portion and also the bead insertion with the crochet hook and the color work. And the designer states that you should be prepared to dive into a project that challenges your skills and awakens your creativity. And another incredibly talented designer from Chile that I wanted to introduce you to is Paulina Castell. She combines modern, more minimalistic lines with color work and thoughtful details. And the first design of hers that I wanted to show you is called the Whim Colorwork Pullover, which came out in February of 2025. This one is actually a free pattern as it is part of the winter of 2025 collaboration between Pom Pom and Hobby, so the yarn company. It is knitted with a worsted weight yarn and a gauge of 18 stitches and 26 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 6 and a US 7, which corresponds to 4 and 4.5 millimeters. The sweater is available in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 92 up to 167 centimeters or 36 up to 66.75 inches. It is recommended to be worn with 10 to 15 centimeters or 4 to 6 inches of positive ease. Whim is worked top down in the round using the stranded colorwork technique. You start at the neck, which is shaped with short rows, and then you knit the circular yoke with the first colorwork motif. Then you separate for the body and the sleeves and knit the body in stockinette in the main color, and at the end, so towards the hem, there is another colorwork motif. And in the end, you add some embroidery using some simple chain stitches to highlight certain sections of this beautiful design. The second pattern by Paulina Castell that I wanted to show you is called Top Primavera Viva, and it came out in March of 2024. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn and a gauge of 24 stitches and 37 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 2.5, which corresponds to 3 millimeters. You will also need a crochet hook with a size of 3 millimeters, and the design comes in 9 different sizes. The finished bust measurements range from 82 up to 162 centimeters or 32.25 up to 63.75 inches. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease. The top is knitted top down and it is made in all over stockinette stitch. You have 2 options for the neckline. You can either make it with a more traditional twisted elastic or start with a provisional cast on and then later on apply an I-cord, either in the main colorway or a contrasting color. Once the garment is knitted, you apply embroidery on the yoke. She includes some ideas for designs for you to apply for the embroidery stitches, but of course you can adapt that completely to your own taste. You can either change the designs completely, you can adapt the placement, and of course you can also use whatever colorways you like. If you do decide to knit this design, I highly recommend that you have a look at Ravelry and check out the project pages from the people who have already made this top, because there you can see that it can go so many different ways depending on your own preferences, and there are so many beautiful embroidered pieces to draw inspiration from. Let's move on to Argentina now, and I would like to talk about one of the most well-known Argentinian knitwear designers, Jorge Locatelli. Based in Buenos Aires, Jorge has built an international following for her elegant wearable patterns, often featuring flowy silhouettes, subtle textures, and thoughtful details. Jorge has a huge portfolio on Ravelry with more than 300 knitting patterns that are available. And she also has her own bag line, which is called Jorge & Co., where she sells leather project bags and other leather pieces. And by the way, I am also wearing one of Jorge's designs today. This is a cardigan called Like a Cloud, and she originally designed it in a very lightweight yarn. I think she used a silk mohair, and I adapted the pattern to use a thicker yarn. I used Tor from Blacker Yarns. I am going to link my Ravelry project page for you in the description box below if you would like to check out my version. But I do have to admit that I absolutely adore this pattern. This is a wardrobe staple for me, and since I have knitted it years ago, I think more than 5 years ago at that point, I have worn this a lot and still continue to wear and enjoy it. So let's move on to the patterns of Jorge that I wanted to show you. Since she is so popular and a lot of her patterns, her newer patterns, are so well known, I intentionally decided to show you two of her older patterns who are just as beautiful, but maybe there is a chance that you have not seen them before. And the first one that I wanted to show you is called the Dragonflies Jumper, which came out in August of 2012 and is knitted with a DK weight yarn with a gauge of 19 stitches and 30 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 6 and a US 7, which correspond to 4 and 4.5 millimeter needles. It comes in 7 different sizes, but those are all double sizes. And the finished bust measurements range from 30 up to 56 inches or 75 up to 140 centimeters. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease. The design is worked from the top down, so it's knitted seamlessly in the round, and the collar is worked from the neck up so that you can easily adjust its length. It is a very feminine and comfortable jumper that's worked in this beautiful textured stitch, which the designer stitch is very stretchy and will adapt to your body shape and hug you. And the second design of Jorge that I wanted to show you is called Tree Seeker, and it is this beautiful large wrap. This pattern is part of her book Interpretations number 5, but it can also be purchased as an individual pattern. And in case you don't know, Interpretations is a series that Jorge is doing together with her friend, the Finnish knitwear designer Veera Velimäki. And I think they have published 10 editions so far. And like I mentioned, the Tree Seeker is part of the 5th book. It is knitted with a DK weight yarn and a gauge of 19 stitches and 28 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle size used is a US 7, which corresponds to 4.5 millimeters. You will need around 1,300 yards or 1,190 meters to knit this one, and it comes in one size. And Jorge states on the Ravelry project page about this design that big scarves and wraps are the perfect blank canvas to play with your favorite stitch patterns. For this design, I chose a beautiful interlocking cable and a delicate lace pattern that complement each other perfectly. Let's move on to another Argentinian knitwear designer now, and I would like to show you a design from Cecilia Lozada. Cecilia is originally from Argentina, but she now lives in Barcelona in Spain. Cecilia is both a knitwear and crochet designer, and she also teaches a lot of workshops and courses. She draws inspiration from nature and more traditional motifs, but gives them a modern twist. And the design by Cecilia that I wanted to show you is called the Alcarif sweater, and it came out in January of 2021. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn and a gauge of 26 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 2.5 and a US 3, which correspond to 3 and 3.25 millimeter needles. You will also need a crochet hook with a size of 3.5 millimeters, which corresponds to size E. The sweater comes in 10 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 91 up to 146 centimeters or 36 up to 57 inches. Unfortunately, there is no information about the recommended ease, but she states that the model in the pictures is wearing the sweater with 9 centimeters or 3.5 inches of positive ease. The sweater has a top-down construction with a circular yoke, and you have those cables and bobbles both at the yoke and also the bottom hem, and it also features some puffed sleeves. The name of this sweater means autumn in Arabic, and the designer also put some words about her inspiration for this pattern on the Ravelry project page that I would like to read to you now. She says, "For me, autumn is a season in which we celebrate our existence as human beings and the existence of the world. After having enjoyed the flowering of spring and the enjoyment of summer, autumn invites us to reflect and prepare to hibernate." Let's pack up our bags and move on to the next country, and I would like to talk about Brazil and the Brazilian knitwear designer Paula Pereira. Paula often uses natural fibers, and she also tends to design lighter weight garments, probably due to the climate in Brazil. Paula is the author of Textured Knits, which came out in 2023 and was published by Line. And if you like timeless designs with a twist, I highly recommend that you check out Paula Pereira. The first design by Paula Pereira that I would like to show you is called Bambuzal, and this is the Portuguese word for the bamboo cane brake. The pattern came out in March of 2025, and it is part of the Line magazine issue 24. At the moment, you can unfortunately only get this knitting pattern as part of the Line magazine, so you would have to order the whole magazine, but it might come out as an individual pattern in the future as well. The sweater is knitted holding 2 fingering weight yarns together to create a gauge of 20 stitches and 29 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 4 and a US 6, which corresponds to 3.5 and 4 millimeter needles. The sweater comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 33.5 up to 67.25 inches or 85 up to 171 centimeters. It is recommended to be worn with 3 to 7 inches or 7.5 up to 17 centimeters of positive ease. And Paula Pereira was inspired by the bamboo trees to come up with these vertical and very unique lines of this stunning sweater design. And there is another pattern of hers that I would like to show you, and it is called the Pointel Tee and came out in July of 2022. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn and a gauge of 24 stitches and 32 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 3 and a US 4, which corresponds to 3.25 and 3.5 millimeters. It comes in 9 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 33 up to 66 inches or 84 up to 168 centimeters. It is recommended to be worn with 3 to 10 inches or 7.5 up to 25 centimeters of positive ease. The pattern comes with 2 options for the sleeves. You can either knit them short or long, and the design is knitted in the round from the top down and includes short rows and this very beautiful all over lace motif. And another talented knitwear designer from Brazil that I would like to talk about is Pris Lopez, and she has a very playful approach to knitwear with very colorful combinations, unique textures and creative shapes, while still creating designs that are completely wearable. And this is the knitting pattern that I picked out to show you, called the Rosalina sweater, which came out in August of 2021. It is knitted with a fingering weight yarn and a gauge of 24 stitches and 34 rows over 10 centimeters or 4 inches. The needle sizes used are a US 3 and a US 5, which correspond to 3.25 and 3.75 millimeters. It comes in 7 different sizes with finished bust measurements ranging from 34.4 up to 54 inches or 87.5 up to 137.5 centimeters. It is recommended to be worn with 1.2 up to 2.8 inches or 3 to 7 centimeters of positive ease. The sweater is knitted top down and the neckline is shaped with short rows. The raglan sleeves are decorated with this beautiful lace pattern, and the waist is shaped with darts both in the front and in the back of the sweater. And the designer states on the project page that this design was inspired by her great-grandmother, who came to Brazil as a Portuguese immigrant in 1939. Now, I hope that you've enjoyed this deep dive into the rich knitting cultures of Chile, Argentina and Brazil, and that you have found some designers and some knitting patterns that have inspired you. South America is such a vibrant and diverse part of the world, and I have truly enjoyed learning more about the knitting culture and history there. I truly hope you've enjoyed this world tour of knitting patterns and designers. I always find it so fascinating how different countries and cultures explore knitting in so many different ways, from modern knitting patterns to techniques that have been passed down through the generations. And if you would like to get even more inspiration and learn more about one specific country, I'm going to link a video on the screen that I think you will enjoy watching next. Until next time, happy knitting! Bye!